Welcome, dear friends, fans, and fellow aficionados of leadership excellence. Thank you for joining us here on Leadership and Loyalty Tips for Executives, part of the Full Monty interview series, where we look at today how to multiply, impact your knowledge and your know-how for greater leverage, influence, and of course, profit. I'm your host, Dov Barron, founder of FullMontyLeadership.com, one of Inc. magazine's top 100 leadership speakers to hire, executive mentor, Entrepreneur Magazine contributor, and international business speaker. If you're a new listener or a new viewer, I want to thank you for joining us in. Strap yourself in. We're about to go full Monty. If you're a regular, thank you for joining us and helping us be one of the top Fortune 500 podcasts on the planet. Rock and roll. Thank you very much for that. Thank you for sharing the show with everybody you know. And remember, we need you to help us stay relevant. So get yourself over to iTunes, rate, review, and subscribe to the show. All right, let's strip it down and dive right in. Maybe through management or through C-suite elevation, you, or even entrepreneurship with wisdom or your courage, you are already a leader. That's why you watch this show. Maybe you're an author, maybe you're a speaker, maybe you're a thought leader in your particular niche. But here's the question. How do you leverage and scale out? How do you go from your business needing and relying on you to becoming something you can grow and replicate? Well, you're in for a treat. My guest today is Peter Winick, his loveliness himself. Peter is an outstanding entrepreneurial-minded leader who has leveraged the power of internal and external relationships to accelerate growth within emerging and high-potential companies that have powerful intellectual property. His accomplishments include startups, turnarounds, mergers and acquisitions in the B2B service sector with results driven by practical strategies, focused execution, and a disciplined method of cost control. He has over 20 years of experience and has worked with a variety of thought leaders. He expertly leverages that along with his experience of such clients as IBM, Kraft, Microsoft, Avon, Hyatt, and a whole bunch of others. In addition, Peter has actually himself built and managed several consulting professional development organizations. He believes that taking great content and creating a platform to best support it takes a combination of art, science, logic, focus, passion, and creativity. Furthermore, he's a master at showing thought leaders how to grow and scale their businesses. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and welcome the great and the lovely Peter Winick. Crowd goes wild, Peter. Welcome!
Well, flattery will get you everywhere. I'll stay for the rest of the show now. Thank you.
Good to have you here, mate. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks.
So let's...
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me today.
Let's start off right at the beginning. Let's say that our listener, our viewer, is already thinking of, let's go to the beginning. Let's say they're thinking of becoming a speaker, an author, or a thought leader within a niche. What would you say is the number one thing that such an individual just doesn't realize until it's too late when they're starting out?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because there's lots of ways that people get there to get to that decision.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of people get there because they're following their passion, they're doing something they're really good at, that they're world renowned at, and it's more that they've been invited into this sort of odd, strange world. Mm-hmm. And what I would say, the thing that they don't realize is that this is a business, right? And unlike every other business, you need to apply basic business logic, right? So if I were to open a little coffee shop in my hometown, there's some things I would do. I'd want to know sort of what the demand is, what my unique value prop is, what the competition looks like, where the locations are, how I could differentiate. However, when it comes to thought leadership, sometimes because we're so enamored or flattered or it was so serendipitous, all of a sudden you're there, right? The world doesn't need another person blabbing on about sales or leadership or management. They need great content brought to them in a new way that drives business outcomes from somebody that's engaging and thoughtful and different. So you have to think about yourself through the lens of a business to say, wow, how am I going to compete in this space?
Yeah. It's interesting because I think it was Simon Cowell, from American Idol. I saw an interview with him and he just said, the number one mistake people make, he said that they're amazingly talented, all those things. And he says, but you see people rise very fast and burn very fast. And he said, because people don't understand the second part of the word, which is show business.
Exactly.
And that's what I'm hearing you saying, is that you get enamored with your own passion and your ideas and your concepts, but that idea of a business is a very different piece, right?
Yeah, and the irony in this space is that some of the folks that I work with are CEOs of Fortune 50s,
right.
World-renowned academics at the top business schools in the world. So these are people that know business acumen. They have business acumen. Right?
Yeah.
If I'm some folk singer at a cafe in Cleveland, you can say, well, they're just artists. They know better, but they don't know to apply it to this domain of their life.
Mm-hmm. So
because they've never done it before.
Because they've never done it before, right. So how would a working thought leader effectively assess the value that they bring and accurately assess what that value is worth? Because that's what we're talking about, right?
Well, before you get to the value, the first thing I would have them say is, why are you doing this? So I think I've talked more people out of writing books than anybody else I know. And it's not because I'm skeptical or cynical, although we could debate that. But, they'll say, I want to write a book. I said, that's great. Tell me why. Why do you want to do that? What do the outcomes look like for you? What are you hoping will be different in 6 months after you write the book? And they say, oh, and they have some ideas. They say, then I would say to them, great. How's that going to happen? And they'll say, oh, well, I just have to write an amazing book because, that's me. The publisher will do that. Right? That's not what they do, right?
No,
so
publishers publish.
Yeah. I mean, you've written a few yourselves, right? It's so I think that's the first piece, is understanding why you're going to do it, understanding what your desired outcomes are, and what the investment you're willing to make in that from the perspective of time, energy, money, et cetera. I mean, I was speaking at an event early last year, and I was talking to 50 people that just won an award for their business book. So these are smart people, and the books were better than average by definition.
Sure.
And I asked them if they were to identify the time period from 6 months before the book came out to 3-4 months after, that 10 minutes to a year-ish time frame, and what percentage of your time that year was dedicated to the book? And the average is about 65%. It's a lot of time, right? That's
absolutely
8 months. And then I said, what percentage of your income directly came from book sales? And it was about 5%.
Yeah.
And then I said, great, so can I buy, 65% of your time for 5% of your salary? Nobody took that deal, right? But they did, right? So my point is, if you're going to make those investments, there are reasons to make those, but you want to make sure that the benefit is aligned, with the effort. And that doesn't have to be financial. It could be, hey, I need to get this out there because this is going to change the world. It's going to make it better. Or I'm more evangelical and I want people to understand my way of thinking. But be really clear about that and be prepared for a lot of work and a lot of effort and a lot of energy. But if you do that against a desired outcome, it's easier to sort of know where you're going.
I think you just made some really great points. My wife has often said to me, how many books do you have in your head? And there's at least 100 books. But the test for me is that I go, okay, I'll write an article on what I think the book is. I write the article, and it gets 200 views. I'm like, oh, clearly not a book. Whereas someone else, I write 5,000.
That only took you a couple hours, not a significant chunk of your life. So
right.
That's fantastic.
But that's someone else I write, and I think, I had to put out, and it's like 5,000 views in a day. Whoa, okay, that's a bit of a different thing. But I think that, like, the point that you made that is really important is I think within us, those are particularly who are thought leaders and creative, we have this desire to express something. And I think that, I know for me, for years, that was a great distinction between that and here's a business piece. Meaning for me, it might be good advice for a business, but the business piece for me, which is how does this translate? And that's what I was saying about the previous question. How does somebody assess their value? How do they actually even get to that, recognizing that the value that they bring so that they can assess what they're worth?
Yeah, so I think this is where a little bit of introspection and a little bit of self-reflection comes in.
Uh-huh.
There are lots of best-selling authors out there that, their stuff is crap. It has no value. If you tried to apply it, you couldn't. It's just total garbage, and that's okay, right? But they're great marketers. I think the true test of the value is, what are the value that your clients or the folks around you are telling you they're getting from your work before you're asking? Because it's really hard to put a price. So we've all been out there at events, and there's a keynoter, and here comes one fellow, and he's a $15,000 keynoter, and he's probably okay. And there comes somebody else, and they're $80,000, and okay, so that's 4.5 times the price, and they're a little bit better than okay. And then here comes someone else, and they're 100. There's why is that, right? Well, some of it is brand and some of it is time, but I think what you need to do with your work before you figure out your pricing is figuring out who are you providing value to, and how are you going to measure that? Because feeling good, which is sort of what I would call the B2C market, the Tony Robbins and the consumer market, that's not what I'm talking about. The folks that I work with, we're strictly talking about a B2B environment. Yeah. So you can be fun, you can be engaging, you can be all that. At the end of the day, you have to give me some thoughts, some information, some processes, some methodologies that when I apply that in my organization, I'm going to yield an ROI that I can attribute to you. So what is the intervention? What is the before and after of reading your book, of bringing you in to speak, of having a conversation with you? And if you can't clearly articulate that, you're not going to extract the value that you want.
Right. So that for me is a very interesting, I think, again, great point to go to, because I know that this is your specialty area. Certainly, even in my work as a mentor with other leaders where I'm paid to be a mentor to them, it's one of the things that I see constantly is, first of all, I think that we have, as a thought leader, we have unconscious competence, meaning we just do it. I mean, many years ago, I said this on a show before. Many years ago, there was a guy down in Denver. He was a specialist in an area that I wanted to really learn more about, and I employed him for the day to work with me for the day. Yep. And part of the thing was, he said, "Okay, let's do a 1 hour where you are the consultant and I'm the client." I said, "Okay, great." So we sit down, we're like 40 minutes, and he goes, "Stop." And I go, "Okay, what?" And I'm like thinking, And he said, "You have no idea what you do you?" And I said, "The truth?" And he says, "Yeah." I said, "Not a freaking clue." And he goes, "You have no idea how good you are, do you?" I said, "No, I actually know that I'm really good. I just don't know how." Because there's unconscious competence. I just know how to do it. But that makes it difficult to assess value.
So I call that, the way that we deal with that, we call it the peanut butter sandwich problem, right? And what I mean by that is, I've got experts in wide varieties of domains.
Right.
And the beauty of being an expert is sometimes you don't realize the beauty of being an expert. So I've got clients that can come in that are marketing experts and just, sort of look around the room or spend 5 minutes with a client and crack a multi-million-dollar problem. Right. And then I said, "How do you do it?" "I don't know, I just did it. Like, it just came to me."
Exactly.
Whatever. And what you try to do is, this is the peanut butter piece, and say, whoa, we need to extract from them how they go about doing that. Because I can't replicate 35 years of experience working with the best brands in the world in that example. So what I do is get them to stop, and it's almost painful. Sure. Tell me everything you did. And typically what they'll tell me is, "Oh yeah, I did all those things, but I did it so fast and I wasn't even aware in an unconscious way." So first thing is, they probably diagnosed the problem in some way. Like, they've seen it, they found something weak, they compared it to something in their mental database that looked familiar, right? Yeah. Then they started to throw out some theories. Then they started to say, "No, it's not that, it's not that." Then they started to escalate one. So there's a whole series of methodologies and processes that it happens at the speed of light, and we're getting them to document it. So to make the peanut butter sandwich, you've got to get the jar of peanut butter out of the cupboard. You've got to have a knife. You've got to have some bread. You have to open the jar. But, there's like 80 steps. Nobody thinks, I would hope, that nobody actually needs to look at the 82 steps of the peanut butter sandwich. But think about the things that you do that your clients say to you, "That's magic." Mm-hmm. And document, probably with a partner, because it's hard to do it on your own, all the things that you do in slow motion.
Yeah, but that's why I'm saying this, because I think that from what I can gather, that's part of your specialty. Is, I always say I'm far better at objectivity for somebody else, because we're all subjective, right? We can't be objective in a subjective reality. So, when somebody comes and sits with you who has that intellectual property, I think that a lot of the time, even our viewers right now, our listeners right now, are going, yeah, I know I'm brilliant at this, and people tell me that they get all kinds of great results, but it's hard for me to assess the value because I don't know what I do. I can't say, I'll walk you through the 6 clean steps to X, Y, Z.
Well, not only do I not know or how I do it, but my clients are only paying for me to do it. So in that instance, if you're the safe cracker, in that instance, the client's going to go, I got to get Dove in because he's magic in this domain. I don't know how the hell he does it. I don't care how he does it. At the end of the day, it's done, right?
Yeah.
I go to my bathroom here, if the toilet's clogged, I call a plumber. I don't know what he did, but at the end of the day, it now works.
Don't care.
That's okay, but that doesn't scale. So in order to be able to scale your business at an enterprise level and get your content out there, you have to be able to articulate it in a codified fashion that is a methodology that is replicatable. Now, the caveat being, if I am able to break that down and take it out of your brain and turn it into a format of such that others can learn, the expectation needs to be calibrated, right? So if I can teach someone sort of to be proficient in it, that's not the same as an expert.
No.
You have to figure where in an organization is it, I'm aware of this, I can understand it, I can articulate it, but no, I don't have 40 years experience. And I think that's really part of what we look at when we're looking at how to extract it from one person's head, how to teach it to others in the right dosage at the right price point for the right behavioral change.
So how would somebody start that process? So let's say somebody's watching this right now. How do they start? How do they even, they go, yeah, I know I'm really good and people love what I do and I'd like to be able to scale it, but I don't know where to start. Where do they start?
Yeah, there's lots of ways to start. Let me think about that. So where do you start? The first thing, again, is to be introspective. Go back and ask yourself, how many times did a client or a potential client sort of do the sniff test on me and I didn't pass? And what I mean by that is when you're exposed to a new potential client, when I'm talking about a client, I'm talking about an enterprise client. I'm talking about a Fortune 1000 client. So now I'm Citibank, I'm John Deere, I'm Harley Davidson, and I'm thinking about problems from the standpoint of 2 buckets. I come across somebody that's fascinating and I go, wow, they're out there, man. They're cool, they're brilliant, they're smart. Somebody like a Malcolm Gladwell, for instance, right? Yep. And they put that person in the category brain on a stick, right?
Right.
So brain on a stick is, I don't know how that guy or gal's brain work. It's different than mine, and wow, it's pretty cool. Where do I put the brain on the stick? Okay, I can bring that into my CEO. I can bring it into the board. I can't bring that to the 5,000 people working the front lines because it's one stick, one brain, right? The other category they'll put you in is scalable solutions, enterprise scale. So if you're honest with yourself, you might, you know what? Yeah, there was that meeting I was in, and the CEO brought in an organizational psych person, or they brought in a training person, or they brought in whatever, and they asked me some questions. I don't know what the heck the guy was answering, and then they never called me again. Ding, ding, ding. You got to put the brain in the stick category. So you can make money or have fun being a brain on a stick, but if you want to make that transition into the enterprise solutions, you've got to have that. You got to have those tools. You have to have those developed, right? Because humans, by definition, don't scale. Great content scales. It has to be ported over into a variety of modalities that can be taken on at an enterprise level, so that we can take a lot of people through it and show that they learn all these new things.
So, again, still the same thing, which is where does a person start? Where does this great thought leader start? Maybe they wrote a book already. Where do they start?
Well, so I would think you start by first realizing which camp you're in, right?
Yeah.
Then what you need to have a strategy, ultimately. So, I'm a hammer, so everything's a nail. At the end of the day, I spend a lot of time on the strategy side of the content world.
Right.
So oftentimes what happens is you can get to a level, and sometimes that's an amazing level, through magic and serendipity. Somebody invites you here, somebody sees you speak, there's a TED Talk, all this sort of stuff, right? And that's great. But ultimately, without a strategy that says, I want to take my content in whatever format, books, videos, audios, consulting work, coaching work, all of it, right? And I want to move it into the enterprise scalable space. Do I have the goods, right? What is the gap? What is the delta between the current state of my IP and the state that it needs to be in? And the current state of your IP could be, listen, when you get up on stage as a speaker, nobody calls BS and says there's no academic validity to what you said. If you say it in a convincing way and in a charming way and with an accent,
or with your loveliness.
What's that?
Or with your loveliness.
Yeah, or neither. Right. You can get away with murder, right? You get away on there. But when you're talking about content, if it doesn't have an academic underpinning, it doesn't mean you're out of the game. You say, oh, I might need some research to validate some of these concepts that I've said. I might need some proof of concepts to validate it. I might need to figure out how to get it out there. And this is where people get overwhelmed. They go, wow, oh my God, this is overwhelming. I know how to write or get a book out, because not everybody writes their books, it's just a different issue. Yeah. And I know how to speak, and there's certain things I know how to do and whatever, but I don't know anything about a validated assessment tool. I don't know what the best practices are in adult learning as it relates to video-enabled content. Well, and the question is, well, why would you, right? When you've written a book, you don't know how to pick out pulp for paper or where to get things printed. So this is where you need to partner with folks that can support you and help you.
Yeah, I think that this is, I think you brought up something really important. In 2000, I was just in New York this week, and I met up with somebody I'd met at the BEA Book Expo America in 2000, right? And we were, we were both sort of entering into that world. And she was writing about how your book is your hook, and she was speaking about how your book is your hook. And I went to BEA and wandered around and listened to all these authors and editors and publishers, and they would all say things like to me, "What's your platform?" Huh? Didn't know what a platform was back in 2000. I've gone away and built an amazing platform. But the thing was that this awakening, which was part of, I think, is the illusion, is that publishers are going to they're going to sell you books and make you famous. And publishers publish. They don't sell. That's you. Right. And you got to get out there and get that message out there. And how are you going to get that message out there? And I think it's this. I think where a lot of us fall down is many years ago. I had a buddy came to me from Australia, came to visit. This was 2 years after I fell off a mountain and got smashed to pieces. And he said to me, "Where's your book?" And I'm like, "Book? What book?" I don't know what you're talking about. And he says, "You got to get a book out." And I said, "Oh, no, I can't." And he said, "Why?" And I said, "Mate, my spelling's terrible and my grammar's worse."
Right.
And he looks at me and he starts laughing. He goes, "These magical creatures. They don't live underneath bridges, but they're called editors. You don't actually." Huh?
Some of them actually do live under bridges. Yeah, actually, yeah.
But he says, they're editors. They can spell and they can do grammar and they can do all that. And he goes, and there's even developmental editors and ghostwriters and all these kinds of things. He goes, there's no reason for you not to write a book.
Exactly.
And I was like, ugh. Now, that is about as obvious as you could get. But in my head, the shit in our head said, if I write a book, it has to be word perfect and it's got to be ready to go. And it's this understanding, at the simplest level, editor. Okay. But the next level is, well, how do you get it out there? What are you going to do? Shout from the rooftops? You've got to know how to market and how to, this is what I'm saying about what I like about what you're doing is that having people realize that whatever your IP, your intellectual property, your knowledge is, it needs a system, it needs a team to scale it out. And I think that we get into overwhelm and we think we got to do it all ourselves.
Yeah, you touched on a couple of great things there. One is the platform, right? So that means lots of things to lots of different people.
Yeah.
Ultimately, what it means to me is sort of you're going to be the X guy or gal. And that requires brand and focus and target. So when you look at some of the great thought leaders in the business space, they pick a lane and they stick to it. So if you think, just Marcus Buckingham as an example on strengths. Marcus is a brilliant man, right? Oxford-trained researcher, worked at Gallup, whatever. However, when it comes to the brand and his position, it's strengths, strengths, and more strengths. Why is that? So when the market thinks Buckingham, they think strengths. They don't think, he also likes racehorses and he's a gourmet. Nobody cares. Keep it focused, right? That's your brand. That's your focus. The other piece is, yes, you can get help. I mean, there are, as you mentioned, sort of 5 levels of folks that can help you on the writing side. I had a client who shall remain nameless when I said to them, have you read a book that everybody was talking about? And they laughed and said, I didn't even read the one I wrote. I dictated it into my iPhone. So you don't need to be Hemingway smoking a pipe and wrestling bears to get a book out. But what you do need is to pick a niche and a space and a lane. Say, I'm going to be better than anybody else out there in this. And I am not going to talk about this, 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 and this. Because we all suffer as creatives from sort of that, creative is sort of a polite word for ADD, right? Because there's way more things that you said you had 100 books in your head.
Yeah.
I would doubt that they're all focused, right? There's probably such a range of things that are in your head, and you would have to, as the business guy, say, well, these are the 5 that actually would make sense. It doesn't mean the other 95 are no good. No. You have to make that decision and say, they're not serving the needs of my business and my goals and my investments.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's but again, let's sort of address that for a moment, because you and I had a conversation a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about how I suffer not ADD, but what I call Renaissance shame, in that I actually can think about a lot of different things in a lot of different ways, because my stuff is actually around understanding the mind of a true leader, the mind of what it takes to be that level, and that has a lot of depth and some width to it as well. And that mind of a authentic, powered leader, that's got a lot of pieces to it. And I know when I speak to people, they go, well, it's this, but it's also that. And it's hard because it feels like you're tearing a limb off people.
So where you've got to be really careful there are some places that would be easy for that to go to. And then as it keeps expanding, there's places where it's not. So for example, I love Starbucks. I'm a coffee addict. I'm in Starbucks 2 or 3 times a day. I love sushi. I probably eat sushi 4 or 5 times a week. If I ever walk into a Starbucks and they're selling sushi, they violated the brand promise. Because that's not, even though I love it, even though somebody might have done some research that said people that do this like this, whoa, that's not what I'm here for, right? So there's a point where you got to figure out how elastic is it? So in your stuff, in terms of the mind of leader, I get the Renaissance piece, but there's a point where I wouldn't want to go to you for travel advice. I wouldn't want to go for you for supply chain, right? So it could be too technical or too out there. You've got range, but you got to also give yourself sort of that test and go, whoa, okay, would this violate the expectation that my universe has of me? Because otherwise it gets to a point where who cares what you have to say about that? You don't have a stake in the ground there. You're not an expert in that space.
Yeah, and
you're my drunk uncle.
Yeah, I love those guys. Let's sort of backtrack a bit into Peter. Tell us, why did you get involved in this particular sort of area for you?
Yeah, so this is sort of a collision of 2 different parts of my world that I thought were totally unrelated, but it winds up they're not. So roll the clock back 100 years ago. And I'm a young guy with more hair and less gray, starting his first business, at whatever, 22, 23, working his tail off, putting all his money into it, whatever. And I didn't know that there were all these experts, consultants, and advisors. And even if I did, I didn't have the money for it. I was busting my tail to build a business. But I knew that as I grew a business as a young person that was inexperienced, and I would come across a problem, I'd have to go, shit, am I the first leader that's got, or the first manager that's got somebody working for them that's disappointed them? Probably not. Am I the first one that's got, customers that aren't paying on time? Probably not. Am I, so I would start to say, well, where else do people go to figure this stuff out? So and I was always a reader, so books would be my first of all. Back in those days in the 1800s or the 1990s, there were these things called magazines, and they used to have a lot of pages, like Fast Company. You could bench press Fast Company or all those magazines back in the day, and you can learn things. So I was just an average consumer of content. One, because I liked it, but 2, because I had a need, and I realized there's somebody else had to figure this out, and I want to learn from somebody else. So that's one world, right? Then fast forward, I don't know, whatever, 10, 12 years later, and I'm running a boutique consulting company, working with startups and small businesses. From there, I go to doing turnarounds because I think that's fun. And I'm doing a turnaround for a communication consulting firm based in Australia because that's where the smartest people on the planet live. But But in this case, they broke the business, and it was a training business, communications consulting firm. So we came in, figured it out, and I learned, because business is business, but now it was business applied to content, and I'm like, oh, so all that other stuff that was just in the, all my bookshelves filled up and the people I've seen speak and all that, wow, there's a business behind that, because I never thought as someone that buys those things that, like, somebody makes a living at this. I mean, I knew it at the theoretical, and it fascinated me to sort of understand the business model of content in this turnaround situation. And then from there, I went and said, wow, there's probably other things you can do now understanding that, because in this case, this was a $45 million global consulting firm. So they knew they were in that business. And I said, who else needs that? And just timing and randomness, I started working with someone that was launching a book, and there was a need. And I said, what's the business model underneath it? And they said, I have no idea, whatever. And the next thing I know, we were building out a pretty significant speaking business and a training business and all that. Did that for a couple of years and said, geez, I don't want to just stay with one person. There's more demand than I can reach, and started the firm. And we're small. We've got about 10 people. And the need that we're sort of working on for folks is for thought leaders, be they CEOs, be they academics, be they consulting firms, be they whoever, that are trying to figure out the business side of this and how to go about it in such a way that they're not burdened with it. Because what I know is that thought leaders want to do what they want to do. They want to write, they want to think, they want to speak. They don't want to figure out sort of what's their social media strategy. They don't want to figure out, how to build. There's thousands of things they don't want to figure out. And it's like, if they were treated like athletes, all they would have to do is throw the ball farther or dribble it harder or whatever they do. But they're forced to sort of learn all these things, as you well know. And that's really, really hard. It's hard enough to actually have thoughtful expertise that the world wants, and then layer on that the marketing, and layer on that the technology, and layer on that distribution, and it's like, all of a sudden it goes from being really fun to this is a job that kind of sucks. And we're trying to prevent that.
Was there a point, because you started off on your own, was there a point where you realized you had to apply everything you're talking about to you and what you're doing? Where you had to realize that? Because, often the plumber's tap is the one that leaks.
Yeah, that's a great question. So what I know is I focus as the CEO and founder of the business primarily on two areas, because that's where that's what I enjoy, and that's what the market has told me I'm best at. So those are sort of the strategy, the front end, the client acquisition side. I love that, right? So I speak, I'm writing a little bit, I'm out there. So that's one piece, and I'm really good at sort of cracking the code on strategy. On the other end, I'm really good at the business development, sales, marketing, distribution side, monetizing strategy. In between that, there are a lot of freaking steps that my team doesn't let me near. And one of my COO said to me once, if we were running an airline, it would be the coolest freaking airline. It would be sold out, but the first day all the planes would crash, because I hired bus drivers because I figured that's sort of like a pilot without, wheels. So that's me. I don't do details, not particularly thorough, but I've got project managers surrounding. I've got sort of like the lion tamers whipping me into shape, and I know the things. I get it in my gut when I'm doing something that I just shouldn't do. I'm not adding value. I hate it, and whatever. It doesn't mean there are certain things I do that are less than ideal, but I've got an amazing team around me that each brings something different to the table, and then we overlap just a bit, so we've got continuity from the client standpoint.
I think there's an interesting piece. One of my pieces of advice to the people that I guide, I said, listen, there are things that you are great at, and everybody recognizes that about you, and it's probably a most high-value time for you, and people appreciate it. And there's things that you're probably really good at, but you're not really fast at. And it's maybe something you even enjoy, that you like doing. Like, I like making memes. But if I make memes during my work time, that's a loss. I can make memes in my downtime, but not in my work time. And I think that's part of the pull is like, well, I'm pretty good at this, and I like it, so maybe I should do that. No. And like sorting that out, I think is a bit of a challenge for a lot of people, which is what is the high value time, which we're back in that circle now, saying the same thing when we started. This is, how do I determine that this is the high value time? I being the person listening, that this is, even though I'm like that, I'm good at that, should I do that or should I do this? How do they sort that out?
Yeah, well, I think So again, now you move from being sort of the creative thought leader author type to a CEO of an entity. Right. So as a responsible CEO of a business that's vibrant and growing and serving clients, you need to know how everything functions and works, but not to the fifth decimal, right? So you need to understand finance. I can't tell you how many brilliant clients I had that get their clocks clean because they forget to send out invoices, or their accounts receivable processes are horrible, or they're not tracking. I mean, just basic sort of hygiene of accounting. And because they stink at it, cash flow cures all, right? So if there's enough money going through, so what's another $5,000 a month out the toilet, Right. So as a CEO, so the first question is, should you be the CEO of you? Because ideally, the role that the thought leader plays is they're creating the content, they're developing the content. Nobody can do that better, right? Then maybe you should or maybe you shouldn't be the CEO. But the way to answer that is, would you be? Would you hire you to be the CEO of your organization? I think, ego, a lot of times I say the reason most of my clients' companies have their name on it, because that's the only way they figure out how to show up to work every day, right? Or they're the only ones that would hire them. But you have to really say, am I really capable of this? If this, you're trying to do a little speaking, a little this, a little that, whatever. You're running a $20 million business. Are you really qualified to be the controller of a $20 million business?
Yeah. I think that's a great answer and a great understanding for people. I was working with a client recently who, his card says he's the CEO of his organization. And I had to say to him, listen, I love you. And you have phenomenal content, but you are not the CEO. You can be the founder. You could even be the president if you like, but you're not the CEO, because CEO actually means you understand the business side of it, and you don't. You're great at the content. You're great at the persona, but you're not that. And that you need to hire somebody who actually can do that piece. And I think a lot of people, well, as well as I do, they love having that business card that says CEO on it, but it really is chief imbecile. It's like, really, you're not really.
We're all curious people that are lifelong learners, but there's a point where, why are you playing around in WordPress? Like why are you all of a sudden, becoming a Hootsuite expert? I mean, there are so many things that are functional that you can buy, and if the reason that you're doing it is because.
So the trick is, if you're doing tasks such as Hootsuite or WordPress or whatever that you can buy on the open market by somebody that's better at it than does it for a living for 20, 30, 40, 50 bucks, whatever it is an hour, then do so. Yeah. And if you're not able to generate, some multiple of that number, you're in the wrong business.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I think we spend way too much time. It's easy. I mean, it's easy to get sucked into something that is not the most valuable thing. And again, particularly if it's kind of fun. But business is I think business should be fun, but it has to be profitable. It has to make sense. So it's a really good point. So give us three sort of quick tips for thought leaders who want to scale their knowledge. What would be the sort of punch in the nose 3 quick tips that you would say?
Number one, invest the time and energy and effort into developing a strategy that'll get you there. It's not going to happen through serendipity. That's number one. Number two, be empathetic and have an understanding of what the large buyer is looking for, because their needs are very different than someone that's buying a keynote or a coaching engagement or a consulting assignment, right? So what does somebody that has 1,000, 5,000, 50,000 employees really, really want? The short answer to that is consistency and a cost-effective way to deploy things at scale.
How do you find that, though? How do you find that out? How do you find out that thing? Because most people can't get through to a Fortune 500, Fortune 100 leader to say, what's the problem?
Well, I think that it's not about the leader telling you. It's about investing a little bit of time in understanding the buyer. So all I'm saying is, what do they buy? So if I went to a store and I was going to compete with that store, I'd want to understand what they're doing right. So understand what someone, even if they're much larger and have been around much longer than you do, have an aspirational sort of competitor. I'd love to say that I compete with the Center for Creative Leadership or whoever. Right. And what are they doing right? And even though you might look at that and say, well, I would never do all those things or do it in that sequence, what is it about what they do and how they position it and the formats that they put their stuff out that enables them to have these blue chip clients? Because you don't have to have Fortune 500 clients. You don't have to make a lot of money either. there's some relationship. Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, go
and then the third would be, you asked for three, and the third would be focus and discipline. So you can't be all things to all people. Pick your lane, stay in your lane. It doesn't mean that it's going to get boring and you can't be creative, but be the absolute best at what you're doing and constantly put the energy and focus into making your content better and better and better. And make sure that everybody that consumes your content doesn't just look like you, right? So whether that is expertise, if you're a marketer and you can only talk to marketers, that's good, but it's not. You know, if you're someone with a little salt and pepper in their hair like you and I are, there's this new thing called millennials I've heard about. They're going to take over the workforce. Guess what? On a per capita basis, if you can't connect with them, if you don't understand how they think, how they buy, how they consume content, you're done. You know, so make sure that it's a broader appeal than, oh, well, I like it, therefore everyone will.
Very good. 3 great tips. So now I'm going to get a bit personal and make you get a little bit full Monty on us. Tell us what it is that gets you out of bed. What is it that drives you at that sort of heart and soul level?
Well, should I get up and get full Monty, or nobody wants that?
Sure.
Yeah, I'll pass on that. What gets, I love, I think I'm blessed that, like you, I love what I do. I love every minute of what I do. And what I love is watching the joy that my clients get out of going through these transformation and making the impact. And we're just a little assistance in that process. But I love sort of the problem-solving piece on cracking the code of how are we going to make this happen, the creativity piece of it is not a 5-step process and everything looks the same. I love the variations and variables and all the different things that you can do with content today because technology is changing faster than ever before. Yeah. And, at the end of an assignment going from sort of back of the envelope to the back of a check, right? So how do you take an idea and monetize it on behalf of a client? That's really a big part of the driver. Very
cool. Well, I want to thank you, Peter, for being our guest today. It's been a great show with some really good, some true gems. I want to encourage you, the listener, to make sure that you not only listen to this in the background, but, listen to it a second time. Take notes. Pay attention. It's really worth you taking the time. Find these great guests for you who bring extraordinary value to you. And it's important that you take on that value. So watch it again, take notes, do all the rest of it. And please reach out to Peter. Tell them how they can get a hold of you, find out more about you, your content, and maybe how to hire you. Please, Peter.
Or all the above. So the website is thoughtleadershipleverage.com. And then you can email me directly at peter@thoughtleadershipleverage.com. There's lots of articles and videos and content and interesting things up there. So take a look at the site, and if you think we can help you out, shoot us an email.
Great. And I hope you'll stay with us for a moment. I'm just going to sign off to everybody else, but I want to encourage everybody to go to thoughtleadershipleverage.com. We will post that, of course, on the site as well so you can see it. But thoughtleadershipleverage.com. I've been on the site. There's a lot of great materials, some great videos and articles. Go there, take some time, give yourself an hour in the evening, one evening or early morning, and go there and sort of really mooch around and take a look, because I promise you, you'll get tons of value. All right, so if you are serious about embracing the kind of positive disruption that builds a culture to develop the next generation of leaders, not only into who they want to be, but who they need to be, so they become evangelical about your organization and have the mindset, the focus that's needed to become the next generation leader, then reach out to me, Dov Baron, at fullmontyleadership.com. And also remember to stop by the Matrix, matrix.fullmontyleadership.com, to get my Authentic Leadership Matrix Self-Assessment Tool. It's $197 value. You get it free for tuning in. Again, Matrix, like the movie, .fullmontyleadership.com. Thank you for joining us here at Leadership and Loyalty Tips for Executives, part of the Full Monty interview series. I'm your host, Dov Baron. Thank you for sharing the show with everybody that you know. Remember, as always, to help keep us relevant, go over to iTunes, rate, review, and subscribe to the show. Remember, you can also subscribe to our channel on YouTube, connect with us on LinkedIn, on Twitter at @TheDovBaron. And then remember that I publish new blogs, videos, and articles every Tuesday and Thursday. Until next time, my friends, stay curious about how you can scale your amazing, fabulous intellectual property. The stuff that's stuck in your coconut. How could that become far bigger, far more scalable, and impact greater people? My name is Del Barron. Stay curious, my friends. Stay curious.